Love isn't something you chase like a prize at the end of a race. It's something that flows to you when you are aligned with your worth, not your wounds. Too often, we run after something that isn't ready for us, hoping it'll fill the void. But chasing love can make us forget that the right kind of love chooses us back. Chasing love often places you in a position of weakness. When you're always the one reaching out, initiating conversations, trying to fix things, or constantly proving your worth, it sends a subtle message that you believe love is something you must earn. This mindset makes you feel like you're not enough as you are, and that someone else's attention defines your value. Instead of standing firm in your own self-worth, you begin to bend and overextend just to hold someone's interest, even when that effort isn't being returned. Another trap is mistaking effort for connection. Just because you're working hard doesn't mean there's an emotional bond worth investing in. Relationships aren't supposed to be built on one-sided effort. When you chase someone, you may convince yourself that your commitment and consistency will eventually win them over, but real love doesn't need to be begged for. It should grow naturally from shared interest and energy. If you're always the one trying, you're not in a connection. You're in a pursuit. When you're chasing, it becomes easy to overlook red flags and ignore your intuition. You focus so much on the potential of the relationship that you lose touch with what's actually happening. You start imagining who they could be or how things might change, rather than seeing them for who they truly are in the present. This habit makes you vulnerable to disappointment and even heartbreak, because the relationship you're chasing may only exist in your imagination, not in reality. True love doesn't need to be forced. It finds you when you're living in alignment with your values and self-worth. When you stop chasing, your energy becomes grounded and confident instead of anxious and needy. You draw in people who respect you and want to build something with you, not just people who enjoy being pursued. The love that is meant for you will recognize your value without needing a performance. It will choose you willingly and wholeheartedly, just as you are. Putting in effort can feel like love, but it isn't always a sign of connection. Sometimes we convince ourselves that because we are trying so hard, the relationship must be meaningful. We interpret our emotional labor, consistency, and availability as proof that something real is forming. But the truth is, a connection is never created by one person alone. It's a two-way exchange of interest, vulnerability, and time. When only one person is giving while the other is simply receiving, it creates a false sense of closeness. This illusion of connection becomes even stronger when we start investing emotionally. The more we give, the more we feel tied to the outcome. We start thinking, I've done so much. This has to mean something. But it's not the effort that makes love real. It's the presence of someone who wants to build with you. When you confuse your own investment with shared connection, you run the risk of staying in situations where you're emotionally alone, but too attached to walk away. There's a difference between showing up for someone and chasing them. When you're constantly reaching out, initiating plans, and trying to get them to open up or reciprocate, that isn't connection, that's pursuit. And the more you chase, the apology has been, the more the other person learns that they don't have to do much. They don't have to meet you halfway because you're always willing to carry the whole distance yourself. That's not love. That's emotional imbalance dressed up as loyalty. Real connection feels mutual, not earned. It flows naturally and requires effort from both sides without one person having to prove their place in the other's life. You deserve someone who shows up with the same intention and presence that you bring. When you stop mistaking effort for connection, you make space for love that doesn't need to be chased, only received. When you're focused on chasing love, your mind often becomes obsessed with the outcome rather than the reality of what's in front of you. Apology has been. You become so determined to make something work that you overlook what isn't working. Apology has been. The excitement of the pursuit clouds your judgment, and instead of seeing a person for who they really are, you begin to see them as who you hope they will become. This can lead you to hold on tightly, even when everything in your body is telling you to let go. One of the most dangerous parts of this mindset is how easily it leads you to ignore red flags. Maybe they cancel plans, repeatedly avoid emotional intimacy, or dismiss your needs. But because you're so invested in the chase, you minimize those signs. You tell yourself they're just busy, guarded, or need more time, when deep down you know you're making excuses. Your desire to be chosen becomes stronger than your willingness to face the truth. So instead of stepping back, you try harder. At some point, your intuition starts to speak louder, but even then, it's tempting to push those feelings aside. You might feel a pit in your stomach or a wave of sadness after being around them. Yet you continue holding on, hoping things will change. You might even confuse anxiety with excitement, interpreting emotional highs and lows as passion instead of instability. But ignoring these signals only prolongs your pain. The longer you chase, the more you silence your inner wisdom. Choosing to stop chasing and listen to your gut is not giving up. It's choosing self-respect. When something doesn't feel right, it usually isn't. You deserve a love that brings peace, not confusion. When you start paying attention to how someone makes you feel rather than how badly you want them to stay, you begin to protect your heart. And in that space, you create the clarity to recognize the love that's actually right for you. When you chase love, you often begin to lose touch with who you really are. In an effort to be accepted or loved, you might start adjusting your personality, interests, or boundaries to align with what you think someone else wants. This doesn't happen all at once. It's a slow drift. Maybe you downplay your opinions, stay silent when something bothers you, or pretend to like things you don't just to seem more appealing. Over time, you become more of a reflection of their preferences than an expression of your own identity. This constant need to be liked leads you into people-pleasing patterns. You start prioritizing their comfort over your own needs, often giving too much while receiving too little in return. You might avoid asking for clarity or expressing your true feelings out of fear. It'll push them away. But the more you silence yourself, the more disconnected you become from your own voice. You're no longer in a relationship where you feel seen and heard. You're just trying to hold on to someone who doesn't fully see you. When you give away your power like this, love stops being empowering and starts becoming exhausting. You feel like you're walking on eggshells, constantly analyzing what to say, how to act, or whether you've done too much or too little. Your confidence takes a hit because your self-worth is now tied to someone else's approval. And even when they show interest, it doesn't feel like love. It feels like relief. That's not how healthy love works. True love begins with authenticity. You don't need to become someone else to be chosen. When you stand firm in your truth, the right person will appreciate and respect you for exactly who you are. They'll meet you at your level, not force you to lower yourself to be loved. Reclaiming your power means recognizing that your worth isn't something to be proven or chased. It's something you own. regardless of who stays or goes. Falling in love with potential is one of the most deceptive traps in relationships. It starts with noticing the good moments, the sweet gestures, the emotional depth that occasionally appears. You begin to imagine how things could be if only they were consistent, more open, or ready for commitment. You see glimpses of who they might become. And those small signs keep you holding on. You create a picture of a relationship that doesn't fully exist yet, but in your heart, it already feels real. The problem with potential is that it's not something you can build a relationship on. Hope is powerful, but it becomes harmful when it blinds you to the truth. You may find yourself waiting weeks, months, even years for them to grow into the person you believe they could be. And while you're waiting, you're often neglecting your own emotional needs, tolerating inconsistency, or accepting behavior that doesn't align with the kind of love you truly want. It becomes a cycle of emotional starvation followed by small bursts of hope. You tell yourself that if you're patient enough, understanding enough, or loving enough, things will shift. But the truth is, people only change when they choose to, not because someone waited long enough. When you're in love with someone's potential, you end up constantly explaining their behavior to yourself, giving endless second chances, and ignoring the fact that you're being hurt in the process. The fantasy becomes more comforting than the reality, even though it's slowly draining you. Letting go of potential means choosing what is real. It means asking yourself if this relationship, as it is today, meets your needs and honors your worth. It's a hard truth to face, especially when you care deeply about someone, but it's also the most freeing decision you can make, has been. Because when you stop holding on to the future you imagined, you make room for a present that actually fulfills you. Love shouldn't live only in what could be. It should thrive in what already is. Love that's meant for you doesn't arrive with confusion, mixed signals, or emotional exhaustion. It doesn't leave you questioning your worth or wondering where you stand. Instead, it flows with ease. It shows up in consistent actions, honest communication, and emotional safety. You don't have to beg for attention or prove your value, because the right kind of love already sees it. It comes to you without games, without manipulation, and without making you feel like you're asking for too much. When love is real and aligned, it doesn't feel like a performance. You can be yourself, flawed, growing, human, and still be deeply valued. There's a sense of calm, not chaos. You don't live in constant fear of being abandoned or replaced. Instead, you feel grounded. You feel chosen once the apology has been. You don't have to push for closeness or chase after connection because it's already there, showing up every day in the little ways that matter most. Effortless love doesn't mean perfect love. It still takes communication, respect, and understanding. But the difference is both people are showing up willingly. There's a shared desire to make it work. Not because it's hard to hold on to, but because it feels too right to let go. You're not chasing someone to stay. You're growing together because you both want to. That kind of bond is rooted in truth, not fantasy. It builds naturally and peacefully, not through cost or uncertainty. Letting love choose you means trusting that you don't have to force something that's meant to be. It means believing that healthy, reciprocal love exists, and that it will find you when you're aligned with your own self-worth, has been. When you stop running after people who don't see your value, you make space for someone who does. The right love doesn't rush in like a storm. It arrives like sunlight, steady, warm, and undeniable. When you focus all your energy on chasing someone, it's easy to lose sight of who you are. You begin to prioritize their needs, moods, and availability above your own. Your daily thoughts revolve around whether they'll call, whether you said the right thing, or whether they're pulling away. Over time, your sense of self starts to fade, and you become more concerned with pleasing them than honoring yourself. What once made you unique begins to get buried under the constant pressure of trying to be enough for someone else. In trying to win their love, you might start sacrificing the things that once brought you joy. Maybe you stop spending time with friends, pursuing hobbies, or chasing your personal goals because you're emotionally wrapped in the chase. The excitement, the emotional highs and lows has been, and the hope that they'll finally choose you can become a full-time distraction. Slowly, your life becomes less about you and more about the pursuit of someone who may not even be thinking about you in the same way. This imbalance creates an emotional dependency that leaves you drained. You might find yourself ignoring your instincts, tolerating poor treatment, or lowering your standards just to stay close to someone who isn't fully invested. You stop asking, "Is this good for me?" and start asking, "What else can I do to make this work?" That question pulls you deeper into a cycle of self-betrayal, where the goal becomes gaining their approval instead of protecting your own peace. Losing yourself for love is a painful experience because it chips away at your self-respect. The version of you that was once confident, grounded, and passionate begins to disappear. But you don't have to stay in that space, has been. The moment you start turning your attention back to your own needs and dreams, you begin to reconnect with your true self. Love that's real doesn't require you to lose who you are. It asks you to be more of who you are, and the right person will never need you to shrink just to fit into their life. When you chase love, your energy shifts from calm confidence to anxious need. Without even realizing it, you start sending out signals of desperation, constantly checking your phone, overanalyzing every message, and second, guessing your worth based on how quickly someone responds or shows interest. This anxious energy doesn't just affect how you feel inside, it's something other people can sense. Instead of being drawn to your presence, they feel the pressure behind it, and often they pull away. Desperation is rooted in fear, the fear of being alone, of being unloved, of not being enough. When that fear takes over, it causes you to chase, to cling, and to accept far less than you deserve. You might believe that by showing how much you care, you'll earn love in return. But the truth is, people aren't attracted to need. They're drawn to confidence. They're drawn to someone who knows their worth, whether they are in a relationship or not. When your energy says, "Ik need you to complete me," it becomes heavy instead of inviting. Confidence, on the other hand, is magnetic. It comes from a place of inner security, not performance. When you're grounded in who you are, you don't seek constant reassurance or validation from others. You radiate a calm, quiet strength that says, "I'm whole on my own, but I'm open to sharing my life with someone who adds to it." That kind of energy is attractive because it feels safe, balanced, and intentional. It doesn't beg for love. It creates space for it. Letting love come to you doesn't mean being passive, has been. It means being intentional without being desperate. It means showing up with an open heart, but not attaching your worth to the outcome. When you shift from anxious chasing to grounded presence, everything changes. You stop worrying about whether someone will pick you and start asking whether they align with the love you're ready to give and receive. That's when love becomes a choice, not a chase. When you begin a relationship by doing all the work, you unintentionally set the tone for how that connection will operate moving forward. You may be the one constantly texting first, making plans, and keeping the relationship afloat. At first, it might seem romantic or even generous, but over time, it creates an unhealthy rhythm. The other person becomes comfortable receiving your energy without giving much back. What starts as effort turns into expectation, and soon you're the only one truly trying. This dynamic quickly becomes unbalanced, with one person giving and the other simply allowing it. You might find yourself explaining their lack of effort or excusing it as them being busy or not great at expressing feelings. But deep down, you start to feel the weight of being the emotional engine of the relationship. It leaves you feeling drained, unappreciated, and even resentful while they remain unaware or unwilling to meet you halfway. The longer this goes on, the harder it becomes to shift the dynamic. Eventually, you start to feel like you're always reaching. You might find yourself initiating every conversation or checking in when they go silent. You may begin to lower your standards just to keep things peaceful, choosing not to speak up when you feel neglected. This behavior only reinforces the imbalance, teaching the other person that love doesn't require effort from them. And once that pattern is set, it becomes incredibly difficult to reverse without a serious reset, or sometimes a painful ending. Healthy love isn't about who tries harder. It's about mutual investment. It means both people showing up, being emotionally available, and contributing to the connection equally. When love starts from a place of balance, it's more likely to grow into something stable and fulfilling. But when it begins with chasing, it often turns into a cycle where one person constantly proves their worth while the other takes it for granted. Stepping away from that pattern is the first step toward finding love that truly respects and reciprocates your effort. The love you truly deserve will never require you to scream for attention or prove your worth. It will recognize your value without you having to constantly remind someone of it. You won't feel like you're auditioning for a role in someone's life or working overtime to be seen, heard, or chosen. Instead, your presence alone will be enough. The right person will notice the quiet strength in you, the kindness, the consistency, and the authenticity, and they will treasure it, not overlook it. When you're with someone who genuinely sees you, there's no need to constantly explain yourself or justify your emotions. They'll take the time to understand you, not just listen out of obligation. You'll feel emotionally safe because their love will be rooted in respect and genuine interest, not in how much you can offer or how well you meet their expectations. That kind of love doesn't feel like pressure. It feels like exhale. You can relax into it because there's no performance required, only truth. In the wrong kind of dynamic, you often feel like you're not doing enough, even when you're doing everything. But when love chooses you, those doubts begin to fade. You're not left wondering where you stand or if you're being too much or not enough. You're accepted exactly as you are. Your laughter, your silence, your flaws, and your strengths are all seen and held with care. And that changes everything because it allows you to stop striving and start being. You deserve the kind of love that doesn't just tolerate you. It honors you, a love that stands beside you without you having to chase it down or shift to keep it interested. This kind of love shows up consistently and freely, not because you begged for it, but because you are enough just by being yourself. When love is right, it recognizes you instantly, not as someone to fix, but as someone to grow with. That's the love waiting for, and it's never found through chasing. It's found by being,